Hey guys, Mike here. So today, I'm here to talk to you about News of the World. In this review, I'll be going over a brief summary of the plot, my quick thoughts about the film, and whether or not you guys should go and see it. So I'm going to try and keep this review spoiler-free. However, if you don't know anything about the film, and you want to go in completely blind, then it's just come into this video once you've seen the film. So with that, let's get started, shall we?
You can't have her! And I'm taking her home!
So News of the World stars Tom Hanks as Captain Kidd. In News of the World, a Civil War veteran agrees to deliver a young girl who was taken by Native Americans to her aunt and uncle against her will. Along the way, the two of them encounter many dangers in an attempt to find a place which they can both call home. And so we have News of the World. So guys, going into this one, I knew pretty much nothing about it. All I knew about this film is that it starred Tom Hanks, and that this was his first Western he's ever made. Now, actually, I don't really agree with that because Tom Hanks is already in one of the greatest Westerns ever made, Woody's goddamn Roundup. Forget your Unforgivens, forget your The Good, Bad and the Uglies. Woody's Roundup is a cinematic masterpiece which needs to be seen by everyone. So to say that this is Tom Hanks' first Western he's ever made is just incorrect, I'm afraid. So already News of the World has a very masterful Western to contend with. But in all seriousness, I was looking forward to watching this film because, you know, I really love Tom Hanks. And to see him actually do something a little bit different, you know what, is definitely very welcome. And you know what, I was very intrigued to see where this story was going. Because, like I said, didn't know anything about it. And to see that the premise is basically about a guy in the end of the Civil War era, going around reading the newspaper to different people. You know what? I was actually quite intrigued because, to be honest, I had not actually seen a movie like that. I'm sure there are probably movies where a character will go around and read the news to random different people, but this is the first ever one I've seen anyway. So honestly, I was really looking forward to seeing this guy go around to different towns, meet different people, read different segments of the news, have his own opinion on them. That sounded really interesting. Then the actual plot of this film sets in. Along the road, Tom Hanks discovers this little girl who he now is the protector for and must get her from one place to another. And at that point, that's when I started really losing faith in this film. Now, I will admit, Tom Hanks and Helena Zengel's characters do have good chemistry together. Obviously, it starts off a little bit rocky, they're not very trustful of one another, they don't even speak the same language. But for a series of events, they eventually come to understand each other's languages and work better together. And really, this isn't the factor where I think the movie ultimately kind of falls apart, because they do work well together. It's the fact that we had something interesting to start off with, something which I hadn't seen before, and which on paper sounds incredibly boring, but when you actually see it, basically a guy going around reading the newspaper to people, on paper that sounds incredibly boring, but the way they present it at the start, they kind of make this character look like he has a bit of an interesting past, and they could have really done something interesting with this. But to be honest, it becomes just the secondary part of this film, and then it just turns into another protector-protectee storyline, which we've seen a million times before, and this movie doesn't do it any better than any other one. And shockingly enough, the best parts of this film for me was where Tom Hanks was reading the newspaper. Honestly, there was a very intense scene from this film where Hanks's character is reading a newspaper at people. Ultimately, this scene was about standing up to authority and giving people a different side of the news which they wouldn't have otherwise had access. But these scenes were so far in between. And for the most part, we just end up following Hanks and this girl. Now, realistically, you could have had this older character with a younger girl's storyline. You could have had it be something like, you know, they're a father and daughter. They are estranged from one another. They don't really get on. But you could have had it be that, them getting to know each other along the way. And it could have been more focused on the actual newspaper reading storyline part. For me, it just should have been just an equal focus rather than it just being about 70% Tom Hanks getting this girl from one place to another, and then about the rest of the movie being about the actual newspaper reading. But I would say, ultimately, I should really stop judging this movie as something that I want it to be, and more of what it actually is. The only problem is, what it actually is, is very generic. Like I've said, we've seen this story a million times. Man on Fire, Logan, just a million times before. And really the thing for me that makes this film stand out in any way, shape or form is the fact that Tom Hanks is in it, because he is up to his usual standard. Tom Hanks absolutely kills it in this role. It's not going to be anything that he's going to win an Oscar for, but still, you know, he's really good in it. And also the young actress Helena Zengel is good in this as well. I see a very bright future for her and I wish her the absolute best. It's just ultimately this movie is just very generic. That's its biggest problem for me. Overall, guys, News of the World was just really nothing special. It had one legendary actor and one very promising young actress in a story which was just, we've seen it a million times before. There's just no other way of saying it. But really, me bellyaching about this movie, it's not to say that this movie is bad. It's really not. There were definitely some really outstanding scenes in this film. It was shot really well. The writing was decent. The acting was definitely one of the better parts of it. And the concept initially was very interesting. It's just they didn't really do much with it. But now, as for whether or not, you guys should go and see it. Honestly, despite the few good things that this film has, ultimately, I would just say, don't bother watching this film. It isn't really anything special. I'm glad that Tom Hanks stepped a little bit out of his comfort zone to make this film, but ultimately, it's kind of the same character that he's been playing for like 35 years, in a setting which we've seen many times before, and this film just doesn't do anything new or exciting. So in the end, I would just say, give News of the World a pass because there's nothing really here worth seeing. Okay guys, that's my review of News of the World. If you've seen it, what did you think about it? And would you agree with me that Woody's Roundup is a cinematic masterpiece? Whatever you think, drop it in the comments below. Until next time, I've been Michael. See ya!